What I was going to say is, regardless of whatever clip you're going to play or part of the entire interview, Bob looked like a bumbling idiot who was called up on a Friday morning to his class to do a presentation and hadn't done his homework. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, more or less.
Does Bob ever look any other way, Mike? That's starting to feel how he always looks.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's had more trouble in recent year or two on that end. So, yeah. But I'm going to play this in a minute. But there was a number of articles that came out earlier this week that kind of tie into this, right?
You kind of owe it to the company if the board wants you back, because they obviously don't feel they have an alternative, at least not at that moment, then you owe it to them to say yes. Okay, it was very quick, and I realized as I heard her words, she was absolutely right. Okay.
Talking about Susan Arnold saying, I was just sitting around in my underwear in my lounge chair at home, and the phone rang out of the blue. Lo and behold, oh my God, Disney's asking me to come back. I had no idea.
Also, let me translate that for you. AKA, I texted her and she called me back. Continue on.
Yeah, this is after he spent the year or two leading up to this moment sabotaging Bob Chapek every step of the way. So
let's be real. He was in his golden shower at Disney when this happened.
Yes. I'm not even touching the golden shower comment.
You said that you didn't want to come back, but, there's been a lot of reporting that you never really wanted to leave. And even people now say, well, is he really going to leave in 2 years?
I felt that I had accomplished so much during my former tenure, including opening the Disneyland in Shanghai and going into the streaming business very successfully.
Okay, let's peel that apart a second. I felt, you're going to hear him say, I did, I, a whole lot in this interview. And it's kind of, you should start picking up on the egomania and the narcissism here of Bob Iger pretty clearly, if you've never noticed it before. So there's a lot of things I accomplished at my tenure at Disney. I opened up Shanghai. I successfully took us into streaming. Please define successfully, Bob. You're $15 billion in the hole on streaming. Please define successful for me in that regard. You got into Shanghai. Congratulations. China can take away all of your investment tomorrow morning if they feel like it. And Disney would be out billions of dollars of capital. And by the way, which they want to, and now they want to invest more into China for some reason, because they don't want to put it in Orlando. Mike, have you seen any success from the financial side with streaming on Disney? I can't identify this.
No.
I'm not sure what I can't figure out what he's
Okay, but now
to.
You're on the outside.
Right.
And you're watching.
Busy, doing other things.
Doing other things, but Bob Chapek's in that role.
Yes.
And you were thinking what?
Get ready for this one.
I was disappointed in what I was seeing, both during the transition period when I was still there and while I was out. But
I was disappointed. I this, I that. Watch him catch himself.
Translate this into the motherfucker wasn't doing what I wanted him to, and that disappointed me. Continue.
That's it. I was upset that Bob Chapek wasn't doing what I told him to do. And we know that because of Alex Sherman's reporting on CNBC. That whole article that we covered several weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago now, I don't remember what it was, but that whole expose from CNBC talking about all the details of what happened when Iger left, Chapek came in, and then Iger came back. He was undermining, like we've been telling folks for 2 years, been undermining him since day one.
Still there and while I was out, but I really worked hard at distancing myself from it.
Liar!
I was trying to be so magnanimous. I was working so hard.
I was trying to distance myself from Bob by going back into my office, which was my office before.
The office he never left. I was trying so hard to stay out of Bob Chapek's way, even right up to complaining on a flight back from Los Angeles that why wasn't I being involved in the meeting between Bob Chapek and Christine McCarthy? Because you weren't the boss anymore. At least you weren't supposed to be.
I want to ask Michelle a question. Women have great intuition and are great reads of people. When you see this guy talking and saying what he's saying, what is your vibe and your feeling? Like, just what What's your woman's intuition about this?
That he's a politician who shouldn't be trusted.
That's it.
Like sleazy. Like, he's greaseback. He's like slimy.
More or less. So, yeah. So he's saying, I really tried so hard to distance myself. I just got away from it. I was just sitting around minding my own business, and Bob Chapek screwed everything up in the 10 months and 2 weeks that he was in control.
And while I was out, but I really worked hard at distancing myself from it because, one, I couldn't do anything about it.
Really? You seemed like you were doing an awful lot from behind the scenes with your 5-year consulting contract and holding on to the CEO's office and the shower that you had. I mean, it seemed like you were still there. Now, remember, I want to remind folks, Bob Chapek did not leave until December 31st, 2021. Bob Chapek only had autonomy from January 1st of 22 to November 21st of 22 when he was fired. That's 10 months and 3 weeks, let's call it. That's it. That's all he... Oh, but he got named CEO back in 2020. It don't matter. Bob Iger was still there. Bob Iger was still executive chairman all the way through 2021, meaning he was still Bob Chapek boss. We also know from the CNBC article, who was it that was greenlighting all the movies still? Who was it that was overseeing all the studios and the creatives? Because he wanted to still have command, even though he wasn't CEO anymore, but he was still executive chairman. It was Bob Iger.
And
let's remember that.
Go ahead. Furthermore, correct me if I'm wrong, he just kind of pieced out when 2020 happened. It was like, someone else take this mess.
Well, no, in 2020, he was supposed to peace out January 1st, 2020. He was in the process
but she's
of
right.
out.
She's right. For about 6 or 7 months, he went like offline ghost. Like
he was still executive chairman, but then he was like, by about March or April, when everything was really flaring up with the pandemic and the lockdowns were really coming, that's when he was like, and he's made the comment before, I didn't feel it was right for me to walk away from the company at such a turbulent time. And I was like, well, you were still executive chairman of the board. He didn't want to give up that control that he had. And he's like, I just named Bob Chapek as my successor, but effectively I had no faith in his abilities to run the company during that. That's what Bob Iger was effectively saying. So again, all of this is what Bob Iger is doing on stage right now. What he did this week was do a very piss-poor job to anybody with more than 2 brain cells to rub together. Did a piss-poor job of trying to cover up all of his failures. And look, he can talk about Marvel and all this other stuff all he wants, the 10 years of good run that they had, which he will talk about in a minute. But what he doesn't talk about, what he doesn't bring up is how bad he flubbed the purchase of Fox, because that undid, from a financial perspective, all the successes he had with Marvel. He wiped out with that $70 billion he pissed away in debt buying Fox that they've basically done nothing with.
Myself from it because, one, I couldn't do anything about it. In a way, it wasn't my business at all.
Yeah,
really.
right.
It was his business to run. And I was not happy with what I was seeing. I worked hard to build the company into what it was.
I worked hard to build the company into what it was. I wasn't
translate
happy.
that into I borrowed as much money as I could from wherever I could to buy stuff and let it burn in hell.
Yeah. I wasn't happy with what he was doing. I worked hard to build the company. It's like, this isn't the Walt Disney Company he's talking about. This is the Bob Iger Company is what he's talking about. This is how this man views Disney.
Yeah.
It's not Disney. It's the Bob Iger Company. And the Bob Iger Company needs to be run the way Bob Iger says, whether Bob Iger is still there or Bob Iger is not. And Bob Chapek didn't want to do it that way. And that made Bob Iger mad.
This is the type person that's going to have to be carried out of the office one day. Like escorted out with security. Like he's not leaving until forced out is the point I'm trying to make here. Because he thinks this is his. It's like he feels he owns Disney.
Yeah. It's his company. Not the stockholders' company.
Over that long period of time, I was proud of those. I was proud of those accomplishments. It hurts when something that you've put your heart and soul into, and that you care about so much, is going through a difficult time.
Okay, so let's then talk about succession, because there's a lot of people in this room, business leaders, who have to think about their own succession, other types of succession. Mm-hmm. What was your mistake then? To the degree you think that Bob Chapek was a mistake, and I assume you imagine it's maybe one of your biggest.
All right, now here comes the screen, right? Here comes because to his credit, whether he intended to or not, Andrew Sorkin just really kind of put Bob Iger on the spot. He focused on him because Bob Iger's been saying I. And he said, let me repeat that little section right there. Let me back it up a couple seconds. I want you to hear how he phrases that.
Through a difficult time.
Okay, so let's then talk about succession, because there's a lot of people in this room, business leaders, who have to think about their own succession, other types of succession. What was your mistake then?
What was your mistake then? You've just taken credit for everything that Disney is, has been, or ever will be. You've just taken credit for doing everything at Disney. So Sorkin turns around and is like, he didn't say what was Disney's mistake. What was the board's mistake? Bob Iger, what was your mistake in bringing in Bob Chapek?
To the degree you think that Bob Chapek was a mistake, and I assume you imagine it's maybe one of your biggest.
Now watch this. That riled Bob Iger the wrong way. It's like, did you actually just say, I made a mistake? I made a mistake? Oh, no.
Well, first of all, I'm not the only one that may have considered it a mistake.
Oh, okay. Oh, now all of a sudden there's other people at the Walt Disney Company making decisions besides this. Okay, pardon my French, folks. Bob Iger, just for the last, now again, the reality is we're 2 minutes into this clip. It's a 6-minute clip of 35 minutes. So reality, you're like 10, 15 minutes into this interview at this point. The whole time, I did this, I built Disney, I accomplished this, I made that, and this other guy comes in and he's screwed it all up. Andrew Sorkin turns around and goes, well, then what was your mistake, Bob, in appointing Bob Chapek? Well, other people said it was a mistake too. This guy is a narcissistic clown.
The board obviously had its issues with Bob.
Because he was set up by you to the board to fail, and Christine McCarthy.
But you knew him well.
I've tried really. He worked for me for quite a long time.
He worked for me for quite a long. He didn't work for Disney. Again, he worked for Bob Iger and the Bob Iger Company. Are y'all feeling what I'm throwing down out there in the audience? Are y'all seeing this? Because we talked about the ego of Bob Iger many, many times and why Disney is in the shape that it's in. This is why.
Do you think in 2 years you really will step down?
Given the list of things that I have to do, yeah, I'm definitely going to step down.
Well, you could say given the list of things you have to do.
No, we're attacking each one of them. I'm confident we will do so successfully. I've spent a year since I came back fixing a lot of problems that the company has had and dealing
so fixed.
Who made the problems?
With a lot of challenges, some that were brought on by decisions that were made by my predecessor.
Oh, okay. Name them. Name them, please. I want to know what they were. I mean, for his sake, right? He needs to deflect some of this and make sure that everybody knows everything's Bob Chapek's fault. Tell us what decisions did Bob Chapek made that are the problems that you're fixing now? Surprisingly, he never elaborates on this.
Some that are just basically the result of a tremendous amount of disruption in the world and in our business.
And that's it. And these little breaks in between these clips are the breaks that I put in to give myself, some space in between each clip for editing. So what are the problems at Disney? Who made them? Michelle, what did you recognize from that, what he just said? Did you catch anything?
Well, the thing that just kind of stands out to me, he's the quarterback who wants all the glory but will take no responsibility.
That's it.
Like that just, when anything's good, it's him. But then, oh no, I'm not the only one who made this bad decision. There's other people now in the room that are making these bad decisions too. Blame them. He's not really a leader. He's just a greasy narcissist that, really is like a politician that just sits there and lies like just like he's breathing. The man can lie.
Yeah, that's it. And the follow-up question, what he answered there, he said, some of the problems that we have right now are due to the decisions that my predecessor made, talking about Bob Chapek, and other things were basically forces beyond our control, the secular headwinds of the changing market, right? Like streaming and cord cutting. None of the problems at Disney are of his making. They are either problems that were of the market changing beyond his control or his predecessor did. He just said he is personally not responsible for any of the problems. He's fine. I built all this. I built the Walt Disney Company. I didn't make any of the problems they have now, which is verifiably false. And it's amazing to watch this man go up there and I mean, talk like this. I mean, nobody should trust a word that comes out of this man's mouth ever.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.